In a world with two clubs struggling to keep from sinking in the tumultuous waters of the Western Conference, one club looking to redefine its identity and step out of the shadow of a now departed, longtime club figure. The other struggling to recapture the magic that took them to the peak of MLS in 2024, but who now look frustrated, lost, and vulnerable. The two face each other this weekend in a must win encounter for both. Let's get into it.
You're tuned into news across the galaxy where they talk all things LA Galaxy with the Nag Boys. Let's start nagging.
Welcome to News Across the Galaxy's Midweek Show. I'm your host, as always, Edgar Zuniga. And joining us to talk about Sporting Kansas City, coming all the way from the Paris of the Plains, it's our good friend from no other pod, Jimmy the Mack is back. What's up, Jimmy?
What's going on? How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm enjoying this nice, cool weather we've been having here in LA. It's like this weird, you know how it is? It's that weird time between winter and summer where it's cold one week and then it's warm the next. The weather doesn't really know what it wants to be, but all the bugs are out and all the pollen is out, and yeah, it's a nice little mix. How are you doing?
I'm good. We're having weather here in Kansas City too. I mean, of course, I'm from LA, so I miss the LA weather. It's springtime or wintertime when you need a nice little jacket in the morning, and then it heats up a little bit in the afternoon is always nice. But here right now we're bouncing back and forth between hail and then rainstorms and tornado watches, and then it'll be 90 degrees one day, and then so it's good old Midwest weather.
God, every time I hear tornado watch, I get that PTSD from my time living in Wichita. I never ever got used to tornadoes, and I think you never do. Especially if you're from if you grew up in Southern California. The first time you hear an air raid siren, it like makes your skin creep, and especially when the power goes out and you have no idea what's going on outside and it's this raging storm. Yeah, that stuff. That's like a core memory for me when I lived in Wichita in '99, and I could never get over that. No electricity for 3 days and 3 nights. All my food spoiled. I remember showering in the dark and going to sleep in the bathtub at night. Yeah, that wasn't fun.
It's not great.
But Jimmy, welcome back to the show. It's been a while since we last had you on, and a lot has changed. So can you tell us, because initially I was going to ask you a little bit later, but obviously the hot topic button when it comes in Kansas City right now is the departure of Peter Vermes from Sporting Kansas City. Like I mentioned in the start, longtime figure, cast a big shadow. How are things with the club right now, and were there any signs that he's going to get going? Because I know me and some other podcasters, we were rumbling about like who's on a hot seat, and for some reason I said I think Peter Vermes, and they were like, no way, they're never going to get rid of him. Well, what happened?
What happened is it was, I want to say, 14 straight games without a win, and of those 14 games, 13 of them were losses dating back to last season. If you think about a stretch like that, and at one point I want to say it was 10 straight losses, 11 straight losses, something like that, and then they finally drew with Minnesota after going down 3-0, came back and ended up tying at 3-3, and then went on to lose the next couple of games to LAFC and FC Dallas. I mean, you think about soccer around the world, if there's any coach in any league, I mean, you could even talk about, Pep Guardiola. If he drops 13 out of 14 straight, that's a hard seat to stay seated in. That's going to get just about any coach gone. And quite frankly, the rumblings of dissatisfaction with Peter Vermes goes back a couple of years. I mean, fans have been calling for Peter Vermes' job in some capacity. I mean, it started with more of a fringe type of the fan base that was unhappy, as these things tend to start with, and then it didn't really get better, and it continued to grow louder and louder and louder, and then eventually, the Kansas City Cauldron and the South Stand, the two big supporters groups, put out a public statement essentially calling for Sporting Kansas City to part ways with Peter Vermees, and it's pretty crazy. I mean, he was the coach of Sporting Kansas City for 16 years. He was involved in the front office for 20 years. He played for the Wizards. He's the only coach still to win an MLS Cup as both a player and a manager with the same club in the history of the league. So this was a seismic shift. But yeah, what surprised me was a little bit of the timing. I figured if they were going to fire him, it would be after losing a game to St. Louis at home, because that's the big rival. They ended up firing him before St. Louis after going on the road and losing to Dallas 2-1. And then the very next game, under interim manager Kerry Zavagnin, Kansas City beat St. Louis 2-0. It's their first win since September of last year. So,
and against the big rival, obviously. And but I like to call it the barbecue. I think it's the tastiest rivalry in all of MLS.
Barbecue, yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about with Matt Pollard, who covers St. Louis, like the barbecue. He chuckles too, right? He's like, yeah, it sounds like very delicious, right? I still think you guys should make a big deal about it. Have the Smoke Masters come out, before the game to have some fantastic barbecue, right?
We have this guy that comes out called Brisket Bob, but he only comes out for the Portland Timbers games because he's kind of making fun of Timber Joey. So they have Timber Joey, and we have Brisket Bob. So instead of cutting slabs of a tree every time a Sporting Kansas City player scores, he cuts off slabs of brisket and throws it into the crowd. So,
oh my god, that sounds awesome!
Yeah.
See, this is what I'm talking about. That's nice and organic. You see, it's not like it doesn't come off like that weird crew thing that they had with where they butt out that slab or whatever, and then they use the jackhammer. That's kind of pushing it, right? But this sounds cool. I like that. I would love to be on the receiving end. I'm cheering, and all of a sudden, like a slab of meat just hits me in the face. Hey, wait! Don't take that the wrong way now. But I found it fascinating. Vermees, he left because he was one of those figures. He's almost like one of those indentured college coaches, like Mike Krzyzewski, right? Or like KU's own, right? Bill Self. Yeah, he's been there for a while, right? And you're like, these people are almost untouchable, right? They're like ingrained into, I want to say ingrained into the club culture, but they're like one and the same almost, right? You couldn't talk about Kansas City without speaking about Peter Vermees. But it just, in speaking before, we had you on the show, I remember we spoke to Kevincho and we asked him like, what's going on? Because even he had his qualms. He's like, he's stuck in a way of doing things, and it's gotten to the point where it's become predictable. And when other teams know what to expect from you and they know that you're going to do the same thing, season in, season out, then you fall into that slippery slope. I wish I could say that same thing with the LA Galaxy, because then you can point to one particular aspect and say, this is what's going on with this club. But in reality, there's a lot going on with LA Galaxy right now, and I cannot point to one specific thing and say, this is what's wrong with the club. In fact, we had a very long list of injuries. Up to 7 of our 11 starters were injured at one point. While now it's just with the return of Maya Yoshida this past weekend against Portland, we're down to just one guy left on that disabled list, and it's the biggest name, obviously, Ricky Puig. But despite Maya Yoshida's return to the team, he came in the second half. It was very dramatic. It was kind of like Galaxy was down, and then you hear like coming into the match, Maya Yoshida was like number 30, in the Royal Rumble, Maya Yoshida. I hear his music playing, and he runs down to the ring. Well, he got taken out right away, because as soon as he came in, the club gave up a goal, which turned out to be the losing goal. But yeah, the fall off on this loss was pretty rough. Obviously, the Galaxy had managed to scratch back from 3 down to 3-2. Maya Yoshida came into the game, and then center back Carlos Ramiro Garces committed a foul in the box that was very borderline. And I know we talked about this before we started recording. I said that we have referee Filip Dujic in the match, and he's Mr. However. I mean, he's gone viral at this point. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And we were hoping for a however moment and we never got it. We were left wondering, like, what the heck, man? We paid, good money to see you, do your clown show, and you never did it. And we really thought that call could have gone to VAR and never did. Galaxy players were very visibly upset with him. Maya Yoshida, in general, he was gesturing loudly at him. Galaxy had give up the penalty goal and then went on to lose. Give up another goal. And at the end of the match, Carlos Garces, our center back, like I said, he was subbed out. He went straight to the tunnel, didn't even hang out on the bench with his teammates. So there's something going on. And then to top off this poop cake, the cherry on top was getting the P chant. You guys know what I'm talking about. In the South End, I was sitting behind the LA Riot Squad, Lars, at that point in the match, which is in the southeast corner of the stadium. It definitely was not them. I don't want to hear anybody say anything bad about them. They're amazing and they police themselves very well. It was just random folk behind the South End, random fans. Sometimes you get that kind of element in the stadium. And I don't know if it's season ticket holders, but a lot of times you just get people that come in for one match, they leave. And whether their antics affect the game or affect the club, they don't care because they're gone and they're not going to come back later in the match. But hopefully LA Galaxy doesn't have to deal with that again. Jimmy, just real quick, I want to share a communication from the LA Galaxy. They actually addressed what happened. They said the LA Galaxy and Dignity Health Sports Park strongly condemn the use of any derogatory language targeting any individual or group. The offensive chant heard toward the end of Sunday's match is unacceptable and in no way reflects the values of our club. This behavior is not part of who we are and it will not be tolerated. We are firmly committed to creating a safe, inclusive, and respectful environment at Dignity Health Sports Park, one where every player, fan, and staff member feels welcomed and valued. That was straight from the LA Galaxy. I can speak personally that in the past, I've had people do that in front of me, and I actually got up and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this does not fly in our stadium. You cannot do that. I will report you." And they've got the image. I mean, they got the message right away. They didn't say it again, and that was that. I wish more people had were able to stand up and say the same because I don't care what your thoughts on this chant is. You can do it at home if you want. Do it in an echo chamber if you want, but don't bring it to the stadium. We don't need to hear it. And it's just not part of the culture that we have here in MLS.
And it's also, it's just, I agree with you. Yeah. It has no place anywhere really. And it's just, especially if you're a Galaxy fan, the history of the Galaxy and they had a fan favorite player by the name of Robbie Rogers, who was the first player in a major North American soccer league to come out as openly gay while he was actively playing. And, this chant, obviously, different people have their interpretation of what it means, but to a lot of people, it's a derogatory term hurled at, gay men in particular. And it's just unfortunate that a club who, has a strong and proud history, both on and off the field in a lot of ways, like you said, it's not the majority of the fan base. It's some bad actors who come in and ruin the fun for everybody. And San Diego's dealing with it as they're new to the league. Other teams have dealt with it. And really, it's a bigger problem in CONCACAF internationally than it is even in MLS a lot of times. But in my view, it's really up to pro and it's up to on international matches, CONCACAF officials to follow the protocols. And I know it sucks when it's we're right at the end of the match, but there really have to start being some punishments, especially for the fans if they're identified. But at least internationally, when there are repeat offender national teams that are continuously doing it and there are no punishments, there have to start being some increasing punishments. Otherwise, fans are going to keep doing it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And just to cap this, so we can move on. I have a friend who's a big Galaxy fan, and he happens to be gay. And he addressed this. He said, the chant doesn't offend me as much. He goes, because, I have a thicker skin than that. He goes, but it does bother me that the team would get, would get affected by this because things are hard enough already for the LA Galaxy. And then to have to deal with the fallout from this stupid, thing to do. And that's what bothers me more. But obviously, like you said, it's a bigger thing, and it's some people will interpret it one way, but in the end, when you hear like a majority saying, please do not do this, you got to move on, man. And,
yeah, that's my thing. It's not that hard to just have a little bit of empathy and understanding. And that's really all you're asking. It's just, if there's a group of people saying, hey, please don't, is it that hard to just not do it? You can still have fun, still drink, still cheer, still be a fan, still heckle. There's so much more you can do.
So. Yeah. And it's meant as derogatory, but in my opinion, like, Robbie Rogers is one of the toughest, strongest guys that we had with this club. To have the courage to stand up and say, this is who I am. This is what I believe, and this is how I feel. And Galaxy fans accepted him. So yeah, like you said, it's really strange. But moving on, well, let's kind of go back to the whole Vermees thing, because coming into this season, what were the expectations and the sentiment among Kansas City supporters? And to add a little bit to this, can you say before and after Vermees' departure?
Yeah, I don't know that the expectations have changed much post Vermees' departure. At least after in the first 8 games, how they were over the first 8 games compared to where they are now. What I will say is, Sporting Kansas City and Peter Vermees during the off season seemingly recommitted to a more substantial financial investment in the squad. Peter Vermees over the last year or two has gotten increasingly vocal about how he did not feel he had the financial support from ownership that he needed to add to the squad. And so that was what was always this interesting shadow behind all of this is, Peter Vermees can't put together a roster anymore. And then yet Peter got more and more bold saying, well, I know for a fact, I've been told that Sporting Kansas City had an agreement in place for a number 10 from Liga MX that was described to me as, quote, a top 5 player in Liga MX, top 5, number 10 in Liga MX. Terms were agreed to, fees were agreed to. He brought it to ownership, and ownership squashed it at the last second. That was about a year ago. So when you're not getting the financial support, it's like if I tell you, hey, I'm going to meet you on the East Coast a week from now, and you're like, great, where? And I'm like, can't tell you. How are you supposed to get there if you don't know where you're going? How are you supposed to build a team if you don't have a budget? So that's my mild defense of Peter Vermees. Now, they also then said, well, this rebuild that we have with this reinvestment of finances, it's going to take at least 3 windows. That's a big ask for fans to wait 3 more transfer windows after it's already been 2 or 3 years of struggling. Now you're stretching what could be a year and a half rebuild into a span of over 3, 4, 5 years. All of this was done assuming that we weren't going to have this 14-game winless streak with 13 of them being losses. What happened simply was it just became too much. Fans moved from anger to apathy. And when they go from anger to apathy, you've lost them. Because when they're angry, they still care. And if they still care, they'll still spend money. When they don't care anymore, they're going to stop spending money, especially when, 15 minutes away, you got the best women's soccer team in all of the NWSL scoring 3, 4, 5 goals a game and are just a joy to watch. So ultimately, that's what it was. I think ownership saw this was the first time since Children's Mercy Park opened back in 2010, I want to say, that the home opener was not sold out. That's big. Once people stop spending money, that's when moves get made. People started to stop spending money, and ownership decided they needed to stop the bleeding before it got too bad.
And let's give some kudos to the supporters, because we've seen, especially in recent times, time and again, that supporters will step up for their club. And you don't see that as much in some of the other major leagues where there's like a concerted effort by the supporters. Yes, there's voices, right? They will say that they're upset. Like, for example, we could talk about Buffalo Bills fans, right? And their never-ending agony and never winning the Super Bowl, and some of them showing up wearing the paper bags. We've seen that with Cleveland, also Cleveland Browns fans. But as far as a focal point, like, a focused point, and having the supporters actually get the ear of the ownership, the front office, and not just be heard, but be a a way to get things going, right? A catalyst. That's what I'm trying to say. A catalyst for change. We saw that with Columbus, with the Save the Crew campaign. And since then, we saw that with LA Galaxy fans with the Klein Out campaign. We saw it with Austin. Austin fans were upset with Josh Wolf. They were very vocal about it. He's gone. And then, of course, like you said, when that came out with Kansas City, I was like, there's smoke. When there's smoke, there's fire. And yeah, Vermees was on the hot seat, whether or not he believed it. I know he had gotten an extension in 2028, but when the fans speak up, like you said, something has to happen. But yeah, it's so tell me about. So yeah, you said the expectations have kind of remained the same. So what does that mean for Kansas City fans?
What I mean by that is, so I think going into the season, obviously the offense had been almost entirely overhauled. Alan Pulido got sold, which was something that accelerated the timeline of the rebuild. Sporting Kansas City would not have Dejan Jovic on the squad right now had Alan Pulido not been sold. So Pulido got sold. Sporting went out, traded for Dejan Jovic with the first cash trade in MLS. Then they went and signed Manu Garcia, a number 10 from the Greek Super League. And while Mike Burns, the sporting director, was over there, he somehow swung a deal where not only did they get Manu Garcia, but they got a winger named Shapi Suleimanov, a Russian who was playing for the same team as Manu Garcia over in Greece, and brought them both over in sort of a two-for deal for $5 million. So I spent $9 million total, got a new DP striker, a new DP number 10, and a TAM winger to replace Johnny Russell, because Johnny Russell was gone and Alan Pulido was gone. So they needed somebody to step into that hole. So there was some hope offensively. Defense, totally different story. Defense has been terrible for a couple of years, especially on set pieces. Most of the defense is out of contract after this year, so that's where that 3-window rebuild comes in. So I think people thought offense could be okay. Defense is still going to be bad. Ceiling for Sporting heading into the season kind of felt like maybe challenging, felt like 6th or 7th spot in the West. I don't think people thought they'd be a wooden spoon contender, but then those first 8 games kept going. People realized this team might be a little farther than we thought. Vermees gets fired. I don't think people are sitting here now expecting that, suddenly we're going to be a contender in the West. What I mean when I say that expectations are still the same, people expect this team, if everything goes perfectly the rest of the way, maybe to sort of sneak into that play-in spot, 9th. But I think most people expect that this is going to be another missed playoff year for Sporting Kansas City, even now.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because for the longest time, Kansas City was always a contender, not just for cups, but for U.S. Open Cup, right?
Yeah.
It's a strong club with a very, you could say, a proud history, winning an MLS Cup early in 2000 and having some great figures come through there. So it is weird, like you said, apathy. Apathy is a scary thing because it's kind of like quicksand, right? I always tell people losing. When you're in a situation where you're constantly losing, it becomes, you try really hard to not let it become a familiar, because once you're familiar with that feeling of losing, it becomes it's kind of like an old sweater that you don't wash and you're just comfortable in it, and before you know it, you've dug yourself this big hole. And I know a lot of Galaxy fans, there's a lot of weird emotions right now at the Galaxy camp. Obviously, they just won the cup, right? So that kind of gives you a bit of, I don't know, kind of like leeway, I guess, of how people are feeling. But there's a LAFC podcaster who's been, we message back and forth, and he's always asked me questions about, what's going on with the Galaxy, and I'm pretty honest with him. And he asked me like, so, is it time to panic? And this was like earlier in the season. I was like, no, I think we're gonna be okay. Once people start coming back. Well, he asked me recently, before the Portland loss, he's like, are Galaxy fans panicking now? And I said, to be honest, it's gone from panic to shock and disgust and disappointment. where people aren't necessarily panicking, but now they're just really upset. And some people have even begun to feel like, oh yeah, they're gonna lose, the season's over. And that's when you say that's that apathy, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, this is who we are. This is who we are. We're a last place team. And yeah, the cup is nice, but this is where the team is right now. And oh well. No, it can't be like that. And this is a team that, yeah, we lost some figures, like we said, Daniel Leach, right, is one of them. But they also added some other players that you could say that they're long-term projects, but you still have a good core of this club still there. I just hope that a lot of people don't look at Ricky Puig coming back as the panacea that will fix everything, because there's no telling how he's going to be when he comes back.
Yeah.
Whether or not he'll be up to form, whether or not he'll be able to mentally be there, because when you come off like a major injury or a surgery, even for us, for normal Joes, right? If you have a surgery, it's always in the back of your mind, like, what if I do something to re-aggravate that injury or something that hurt myself?
Right.
And these guys are professional athletes playing at a high speed, and all it takes is like a certain collision, stepping the wrong way, and all of a sudden, things are bad. So
Yeah.
But it is fascinating for us over here that the club is like this. Can you give us, like, maybe, I know you're over there, watching from the outside, but what's, from your point of view, what are you looking at when you look at the LA Galaxy? Like, what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah. I mean, I think from my perspective, I haven't watched every second of every Galaxy game this year, but I think, the things that stand out to me is obviously one, Ricky Puig is not available. There have been some injuries, obviously, not replacing effectively Dejan Jovic in a way that replaces that production in the same way. I know they have Christian Ramirez, Superman, as he's been known across his career. I'm a big Christian Ramirez fan. I always have been, but I mean, I don't have to tell you, he's not Dejan Jovic. And he just doesn't play in the same way. And I think you can see that, the way that Dejan Jovic and Gabriel Peck sort of had their chemistry, especially with Ricky Puig on the field last year, that you had this trio. I mean, even just Paintsill. I mean, there was sort of like this chemistry and this fluidity to the attack that it felt almost effortless. Everybody knew when the Galaxy were coming, goals could be scored. You don't have that same feeling with the Galaxy this year. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people, at least on the sporting side, when Dejan Jovic came over here, people were like, is he going to be able to replicate what he's done with the Galaxy when he doesn't have Ricky Puig, when he doesn't have Gabriel Peck? And I think it's almost interesting because it seems like Gabriel Peck is the one who's really kind of struggling to get back into a rhythm in the way that he was performing last year, because he was incredible last year. So obviously, I know defensively the Galaxy have had some struggles too. I think that's the thing. If there are similarities between these two clubs, it's been a struggle for much of the season to score goals, and they give up a lot of goals. And when you don't score and you give up a lot, it's a recipe for disaster. I do think it's interesting that, I saw, I have it up on my second screen here right now. This was, about a week ago, a little more, week and a half ago, there was an LA Galaxy fan Twitter account. I don't know if it's a group or what, but, they said, could it be time for hashtag Vanny out? And Ricky Puig was the one who found it and quote tweeted it, and all caps like, no. And so, but I do think it's a good illustration of, like you said, how fickle fan bases can be, especially one that has the proud history like the LA Galaxy that aren't used to being at the bottom of the league. I mean, I don't have to tell people who are, listeners to your podcast. I'm sure I'm a USC fan. I grew up a USC fan. I went to USC. My heyday was the Pete Carroll years, and now, Pete left, and we were like, it's not going to be that bad. And then it is that bad, and it's maybe getting better now, but 20 years, it hasn't really been the same. So you want to nip it in the bud before it gets to that point where you end up with an apathetic fan base.
Yeah, we actually addressed that tweet you're talking about in one of our shows, and we all agreed, like, no, we agree with Ricky, right?
Sure.
Where, like, there's no way. The guy just won you a cup.
Right. You can't do that.
And a lot of the stuff that's happening is out of his control. And there's injuries, there's new players, and then you could be the manager and you could set up things the way that you think are going to work out. But in the end, you have individuals who have individual issues that they're dealing with, and they're all adults, right? You can't hold their hand and tell them what to do. These people are going to do what they want to do, but even though they're professional athletes, and that's the difficult thing. That's why I said, there's no. You can't really blame one specific thing. You could point to different aspects of what's going on, but there's not one specific thing that you could say, this is it. This is the reason why things are the way they are. Because there's a lot to go around.
That's how it was with Sporting for the last few years. And the way that I described it was, it felt like for, the past 2 years, the only way Sporting ever was going to get a win is if they played a perfect game. They weren't good enough at anything that they could overcome a mistake elsewhere. They had to play a perfect game if they wanted to win. And what I mean by a perfect game is like, okay, you somehow get a clean sheet and you score a good goal, but they weren't a team that was scoring 3, 4, 5 goals a game. So you really had to hit on all cylinders on offense, and you had to hit on all cylinders on defense at the exact same time. Good teams are good enough to overcome bad nights, and Sporting wasn't there. And it feels like the Galaxy are sort of in the same place right now. Like, yes, if they have a perfect night, they could get a result. They have talent on the squad, but there's something that's just not clicking. And that was honestly the most frustrating thing about Sporting these past couple of years. You could look at the talent on the team on paper and say, this team should be competing for playoff spots. There's no reason it shouldn't, but for some reason it's not. And for Sporting, it got to the point where there just needs to be a change. For whatever reason, the sum of this is less than its parts. And even Johnny Russell a couple of years ago, when, been in the midst of one of the worst seasons in club history, and we asked him, like, what needs to change? And he goes, I honestly don't know what to say anymore. Like, I'm at a loss. And when your captain is saying that in the locker room, then that's a sign.
Yeah, I'm not a captain of the team, but that was me this weekend. Some people are asking me, like, hey, Edgar, how do you feel? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know what to say. It's sad. Usually I'm used to, we're so used to, especially here in the US, right? Whenever you feel a sense of misery or tragedy, you try to lessen the blow by inserting a bit of comedy, right? Or like making a quip. But I can't really say anything funny to explain what's going on. It's just,
well, and sometimes that's it. I mean, it's Peter and even Kerry Zavagnin, our new coach, used to use this word a lot, but sometimes it's a mentality thing. And I don't mean it in that, like, the players don't want to win, but like, sports psychology is a real thing. And sometimes players get in their mind so much, or things are going bad so much, that like the pressure ratchets up that much more. So when one thing goes wrong, it gets bigger in a player's mind than it would otherwise. And it just becomes this snowball effect where now the little things feel bigger and worse to the player. And that's not a good environment for everybody. And Sporting, a couple of years ago, they kind of fixed it when they went on their second half run to go to the playoffs. They literally did a players only retreat to a cabin in the middle of nowhere that they never talked about what actually happened there. And they had hard conversations, and then they went on a run in the second half, and you're like, okay, something happened. But that's not a sustainable thing. You can't go to a secret cabin in the woods every year to magically talk away your problems. But for Sporting, it seems, because they're doing better now, a change in coach brought in a change in philosophy, a change in mentality, and they seem to be playing better. I'm not at all saying that there needs to be a change in coach for the Galaxy. I think that'd be crazy right now. Vanny's a good coach, but maybe a player like Ricky Pooch coming back at some point, or an influx from a summer transfer signing or something, could be something to change things up enough that it re-energizes the team. So,
yeah, the one thing I will hang my hat on is I keep hearing that the club is set up pretty good for 2026 with a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
So there's that, but you still don't want to have this season be a total wash, because while MLS Cup playoffs seem kind of distant at this point, it's MLS, and you have to be really, really, really bad to not go to the playoffs, and there's still 2/3 of the season to go. So a lot could change. Also, there's Leagues Cup, and I'm not a big fan of Leagues Cup, but hey, if it means a chance at a trophy, then what the hell, go
Sometimes
for
that's
it.
not, you can make you feel better when you hoist a trophy, even if it's a
Yeah,
made up trophy.
I mean, personally, I prefer it was like the Open Cup, but
Yeah.
whatever. So let's get into this game. First of all, player availability report. Sorry. For the Galaxy, obviously, there's only one guy missing. Biggest name, Ricky Puig. Still recovering from the knee injury and subsequent surgery. So we're still waiting for him. What about for Kansas City? What can you tell us, Jimmy?
Yeah, Sporting has been dealing with a handful of injuries off and on. Jake Davis is probably the most notable injury. He's a midfielder. He's probably not a name that jumps off the page to fans who aren't familiar with Sporting Kansas City, even though he was the Sporting Kansas City team MVP last year. He's a young guy. He started as a midfielder, played right back for part of his career with Sporting Kansas City after he came out of the academy, just out of necessity because all of our right backs were injured. But when he's in the midfield's different. This guy's a future captain, I truly believe, if he sticks around with Sporting and doesn't get sold overseas. He's got a motor, he's got passion, he's got energy. He's good in the attack, but he's good enough in defense that he can really go box to box. He can play number 10, he can play number 8, he can play number 6. He's been out the last couple of weeks. He was doing some running last week on the side and looked good, but wasn't doing team activities yet. So if he's available, that'll be a big thing for Sporting Kansas City. The report as of yesterday is he will probably be back. The other name to keep in mind is Danny Rosero. He's the big Colombian center back. He's been out for a little bit. He will also probably be back in some capacity. Now, whether that's starting or not, I don't know. Joaquin Fernandez, he's typically the other starting center back. He will probably not be available. So we might have one of our two starting center backs there. Joaquin Fernandez, the other one, hamstring injury, probably not available. The one guy to watch on top of the injuries, who should be available, but it's a question to see how much, if at all, he'll play, is Sporting Kansas City did just sign on loan Santiago Munoz from Liga MX. He's a 22-year-old striker from Leon. He doesn't have a prolific goal-scoring history. He's got 6 goals, but he's a young player. He's coming to a new league. He's a loan-to-buy option after this year if things go well, because we just sold William Agata to Real Salt Lake. So he very well may get some time, and he's sort of an unknown. We'll all learn together what he can do against the Galaxy.
Interesting. We have a loan to buy guy as well. His name is Mateus Nascimento. He came in from Brazil, and a lot of fans were really excited because some people saw him as like another Gabriel Peck type of player, but he hasn't really gotten much playing time. So obviously Greg Banning must not see something there that merits him starting. So he's one of those guys that I said was a long-term project. Hopefully it works out for him, but he isn't alone. So who knows how long that'll last. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the all-time records between these two teams. These two legacy clubs, they have played each other 72 times in the regular season, and it's a lot tighter than people would expect because a lot of people see LA Galaxy, traditional rivals, with Chivas USA / LAFC, San Jose Earthquakes, but Kansas City has always been about a big rival with the LA Galaxy. I remember when Galaxy made that run to MLS Cup 96, it came down to Galaxy versus Kansas City. It came down to a shootout, which at that time, any one of the two teams could have gone in there and probably challenged DC for that cup. Obviously, it was Galaxy, but yeah, it came down to that. So in the regular season, LA Galaxy has 28 wins. Kansas City has 26, 18 draws. But playing in Kansas City, LA Galaxy only has 10 wins. Kansas City has 18, and there's 9 draws. The last time these two teams played was June 15th, 2024 at Dignity Health Sports Park. Galaxy won 4-2, courtesy of Dejan Jovalic, who had 1 goal and an assist, Gabriel Peck, who had 1 goal and 2 assists, and then other goals by Joseph Pinto and Miguel Berry. Stephen Arifa and Robert Castellanos got the 2 goals for SKC. but the last time the Galaxy played in Kansas City was a pretty significant match for Galaxy fans. It was on Saturday, March 23rd, 2024.
And believe
Jimmy,
me,
are you
sporting
shaking your
fans
head?
remember.
Are you shaking your head? Because I know when we mentioned it to Kevincho, he like almost like punched the wall.
Hmm.
It
When
was
you
one of the top four,
blow a lead in what, 12 minutes?
something like that. Yeah, it was one of the top four matches of Galaxy's 2024 season. Goals by Nemanja Radoja. Did I say it correct?
Mhm. Yep.
And Willie Agata had SKC up 2-0 at the half. In fact, KC made it 2-0 right at the 45 mark. And you know, in footy, right, in football, you give up a goal like right before the half, man. It's a psychological blow as you're going in. So a lot of Galaxy fans were like, "Damn it, you know, who knows if they can come back." Our good friend, like I said, our good friend Kevicho was feeling good during his live watch along. I remember like popping in and saying, "What's up?" And he's like, "Hey." However, Hella Galaxy turned things around in the 72nd minute. Eric Zavaleta put Galaxy on the board, followed 3 minutes later by Jovic in the 75th minute. And then with the comeback completed in the 80th minute, a goal by Mark Delgado. At the time, it was a sign that there was something special with this 24 Galaxy squad who went on to develop a never say die attitude throughout the season. Um, Jimmy, you mentioned this. This is a game that still sticks in your mind. Any like last thoughts on that before we move on to the next section?
I just think it was indicative of Sporting, and almost sort of illustrates what I was saying is Sporting had to play a perfect game in order to win. And they were well on their way. Set 2-0 in the 72nd minute. You shouldn't be losing that game. And then they just fell apart. And the Galaxy obviously were a very, very good team. But I mean, to give up 3 goals in a span of 8 minutes and at home and to go from getting all 3 points to no points is unacceptable. And it happened too many times for Sporting Kansas City. The amount of points that they had dropped from a winning position just was unbelievable, near the top of the league. So just, yeah, it was sort of indicative of Sporting over the last handful of years.
Man, what I would give to have a 2-0 lead at any point. LA Galaxy this season, they've led for a total of 26 minutes when they scored on Orlando City, and the rest of the time they haven't led at all. So it's been we're going to the grinder, man. It's been pretty rough.
Well, the good news is for the Galaxy, Sporting's defense is not great, especially from set pieces. Quite frankly, if you can, run of play, Sporting's defense has been decent. But the amount of set piece goals they've given up, or goals that are functionally set pieces, they're throw-ins off a throw-in. It's not technically a set piece, but it's a similar type of deal. That's Sporting's weakness. So Sporting's offense has turned around and turned a corner a little bit. In the first 8 games of the season, when Peter Vermees was in charge, they only scored 2 or more goals one time. In the 4 games since Peter Vermees has been fired, they've scored 2 or more goals in 3 of those 4 games. So the offense certainly doing a lot better. Now, having said that, you look at the schedule for Sporting Kansas City in those 3 games since Peter Vermees has been fired. Yep, that first one against St. Louis, it was a clean sheet. Only one of the year. Great. But then they gave up 4 goals to Portland, 3 goals to San Jose, and 2 goals to Cincinnati. So the defense is still leaking. So there's chances for the Galaxy if they can especially get a set piece or steal a penalty.
Wow, that's a big if. Normally I would offer a ref report at this point, but unfortunately the pro website has been down all day. I think it's kind of ironic the way people are watching pro right now, because there's been a lot of criticism levied at pro. Usually, right? There's always that crutch, right, where your team doesn't win a match, and you could point to a specific moment during a match where there's a questionable call on the field, and you could say, "Oh, this ref cost us the match." But that's when you have your rose tinted glasses on as a fan, right? But we're supposed to be more objective, right, Jimmy? And you can be like, yeah, that's a foul or that's not a foul. But this season, I've been seeing a lot of our peers from across the league state their displeasure with the officiating. I know Josh Guessman from Corner of the Galaxy mentioned that on his show that they actually had a pool question that was sent to the officials, and people were saying, "Why are you doing that? You're wasting your time. You know they're not gonna really give you a straight answer." And the answer that they gave was just it was really lame. It was kind of not even addressing the question that he posted, and um, it's like answer the damn question, man. Just be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Just quickly on that, I know even there's been frustration from the pool reporting process here in Kansas City as well. It was earlier this month where the pool reporter, Daniel Sperry from the Kansas City Star, it was after the Portland game, asked two different questions, and the answers that he got from Pro were literally a copy and paste of the same exact response, even though they were two different questions. It was about the same play, but two different aspects of the play, two different questions, and they just did copy paste, same exact answer, didn't address the question. So they have a new pool reporting system this year that's supposed to be more transparent and get better information, and so far it's not working.
Maybe it's AI. Maybe they ask a bot, "Hey, can you answer this for us?" Yes. Yeah. Sounds like a Dalek. Yes, yeah. Exterminate the league.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we could talk about refs all afternoon, but we rather not waste our time on that. We do have a couple of questions interesting that people sent my way. One of them is kind of weird, and I'll start with that one, right? Because the other one is like pretty basic, but this one I don't know what to say. I guess it could go for both of us, Jimmy, because we can look at it both ways. So I'm gonna let you take the first shot at it. Okay, so with the current roster that you guys have, would you rather have Greg Vanney or Peter Vermees as coach?
Well, we've tried it with Peter Vermees and it didn't work. So I guess give me Greg Vanney and we'll see if he could do something different.
Yeah, we call him Greg the Builder, like Bob the Builder. So
yeah, I mean I do think Vanney's a good coach. I mean he's won MLS Cups with multiple teams, so I don't think he forgot how to coach in the first 12 games of the season.
I will say that before Greg Vanney came within any mention of a new manager here, Peter Vermees was one of the guys that I thought this guy could be a good manager, not just with LA Galaxy. At one point, I said I think he'd be great for the U.S. national team, right? Mm-hmm. But times have changed, and I don't know what to think about Vermees, but the fact that he was there for so long and ingrained in the club, and there were diminishing returns, obviously. Hindsight is 2020, right?
Yeah. I think what I will say about Vermees is I think he's a fine manager. I think he can still be a good coach. Part of the biggest problem that he had in Sporting Kansas City was he was not just a coach. He was also the technical director and the chief soccer officer, and he did everything. He oversaw everything. He was in charge. He was the manager of Mike Burns, our sporting director. When is the sporting director ever reporting to the head coach of the team? It's not something that happens. So if you could put Peter Vermees in a situation where he was not in charge of roster building, he was not in charge of the academy, and he could just focus on coaching the players that are put in front of him with a well-funded roster, I think he could be a good coach still.
Yeah, we kind of had that here for a few years with Bruce Arena when he was also general manager. But Bruce is Bruce. He's just a different kind of person. But yeah, if I would answer that question, yeah, I'd rather have Greg Vanney. I feel like Vanney is trying really hard to build things in his vision. When it works, it works. We've seen it with TFC. We saw it with LA Galaxy last season. You put this guy in a vacuum with a healthy roster, guys that are buying into his style, and I think Galaxy would be amazing. The other question we have, somebody asked me, will this team score on the road or will it be another L? Hey, let's get into predictions. And then I could definitely answer that question. Damn. Oh my God. I'll let you have first crack, but but go ahead. Yeah, I'll let you have first crack because I was going to say something about my predictions. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let me caveat this by saying the toughest, but also simultaneously the most fun thing about Major League Soccer is any team can beat any other team on any given day. Clearly, there are better teams that rise to the cream of the crop over the course of a full season. But Major League Soccer is a weird enough league that on any given day, the worst team could beat the best team for seemingly no reason. Having said that, I do think, given the turnaround that Sporting has had, given the increasingly dynamic attack we've seen over the last handful of games, there's been a lot more fluidity, particularly between Manu Garcia, Shabi Suleimanov, Danjovic, and even Daniel Shalhoub and Eric Tommy getting in on things. The way we described it on our podcast earlier this week that released on Tuesday, and it sucks to hear as a Galaxy fan, but and it's sad that the Galaxy are in this state, but we sort of described it as like, this is a get right game for Sporting Kansas City. Like you cannot not win this game.
Damn.
Like you can't have the team that is at the bottom of the league table come into your place and take points off of you. It just would be unacceptable. And it's so weird to say that as we're playing the Galaxy. Like it would make more sense if it was like, oh, it's the Colorado Rapids or somebody that like has had their ups and downs. So, but quite frankly, the way the Galaxy have been playing, Sporting needs to get 3 points off this if they want to continue to build on the momentum they have with Kerry Zavagnin. And I think given the leaky defense the Galaxy have shown to start this season, Sporting have a real chance to put in, 2, 3, 4 goals if they're firing on all cylinders like they have over the last handful of weeks. And if Sporting can get to 3 goals, I think they have a good shot at winning.
Before I ask you for like a score prediction, like score prediction, I just want to say that the Galaxy defense this year has allowed almost the same amount of goals at this point in the season that they did last year.
Yeah,
I think it's like they're giving them. I think the difference is like 3 goals, which isn't a lot. So it's the defense. The Galaxy defense isn't fantastic, but I don't think it's necessarily the defense that's the issue. It's they're not scoring goals.
They're not scoring anything either. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, a lot of people have been joking, saying this is Dejan's hat trick game. What's your score prediction? Like, what score are you going to give us for this one?
It would not surprise me at all for this to be like a 3-2 game where Sporting wins and like Sporting's up 3-1 for a large part of the game. And then the Galaxy get a set piece in the 80th minute and suddenly it's 3-2 and everybody, the air goes out of Children's Mercy Park and we're, fighting for our dear life for the last 10 minutes to hold on to the win. And hopefully they do, but I could see a 3-2 type game. I do think the Galaxy will have chances to score. Sporting's defense just has not shown the ability to keep teams off the score sheet. So I said it's a get right game for Sporting Kansas City. The Galaxy could just as easily say this is a get right game for at least for our attack, because Sporting KC's defense might be the worst defense they've played all year.
Damn. Are you trying to goad me into saying that they're going to win?
No, I'm just saying that you might score a goal or two.
Because I was going to say that I've been keeping track of all my predictions, right? And I mentioned this in our last midweek. I mentioned this in our last show that at one point I was 70%. Going into the Portland match, I had predicted my predictions were 70% correct, right? Where here's the sad part, right? Every time I said, "Oh, Galaxy's going to lose this game," or "They're going to get a draw," I was spot on. And every single time I predicted a win, they've either lost or drawn, right? And so I said, you know what, this can't go on forever. Mathematically speaking, we're due for a win against Portland. I was like, I kind of went in there thinking like, damn, Portland's in form right now. They're a better team than they have been in a while. But no, damn it, Galaxy lost. So there goes another wrong prediction for me. But that said, I just want to point something out real quick. I don't know how you feel about this, but we played Portland twice in the last, I would say 5 weeks. It was a 5-week window. Yeah. And I really don't like that. I wish that we would play them again later in the season, because you're going to get a completely different LA Galaxy squad later in the season. But MLS is gonna MLS, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's because of the whole truncated schedule with the Leagues Cup thrown in the middle. Um, I just don't like it. I don't
Yeah,
know how you feel about that.
the exact same thing's happening to us with Portland. We played them 3 games ago on April 13th, and then we play them right after the Galaxy again in Portland on May 10th. So twice in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
And I know Portland might benefit from that because both Kansas City and Galaxy are not particularly good form right now. I'm not saying that you guys are going to lose to Portland, but you know they're favored to win, right? They're in
yeah.
a better
Well,
position
and it's
than both
in
our
it's in
clubs.
Portland, so
Yeah, it's a tough place to play.
yeah.
But as far as me, God, I'm sorry, we're not going to win this one. I'm going to say I'll be positive though. I'll be positive. I'll be a little positive Pete here. I'm going to say 2-2 draw. And Kansas City
Very
fans are going to
possible.
be like upset because they didn't get the win against the poor woeful LA Galaxy. But if Galaxy does pull off a win, I think it'll go a long way towards helping heal this club. I feel like yeah, because they've dealt with a lot of injuries, but I also feel like there needs to be some kind of healing in this club. I know we're starting to see a lot of some fractures with the roster, with the players
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and you don't usually see that from a team that's defending champions. So
Yeah.
we'll see, we'll see. But
It's very possible. Like I said, anything can happen in Major League Soccer. You know, you can have a game like Kansas City did against San Jose on the road where they win 5-3, and then they can lose to Cincinnati the next week, but only scoring 1 goal. So who knows?
But yeah, a lot of people pointing at as Dayon's revenge match, saying that you guys, damn it, you guys should have kept me, done whatever, to keep me. But here I
If
am,
he's
and here's
if he
three
scores,
goals.
you think he celebrates against his old team?
Oh my God! Can you imagine he does his little, and celebrates?
Well, he got
Oh,
fined a couple of weeks ago for Sporting KC because he had a, no pun intended, ballsy Panenka against St. Louis that just it was disrespectful and nasty. Though I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then he celebrated before he did his little pistols. He celebrated and he grabbed his crotch and was kind of yanking it up and down. So he uh, he got fined for that one.
you said
But
that was against St. Louis?
yeah,
Oh my God, yeah, that's Dayon right there, man. Because whenever I mean Dayon's a good player, right? But whenever we played against LAFC, that's when I think he has like there's something different about him in these rivalry matches because he would celebrate a little harder against LAFC. I remember like there was a game where Galaxy came back, he scored a goal, and it was at BMO, and he literally ran up to the crowd and put his hands up, and they were throwing trash and everything about him. He did not flinch the entire
yeah.
time.
So
All the players behind him were like ducking, and he's just like, what? And
yeah,
everyone was like, oh my God, Dayon, you're gonna get hit. He
yeah,
doesn't care. He's a
yeah.
beast.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does if he does score.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, thank you so much, man, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. It means a lot to me to have you on here. And we're really looking forward to having you on again later in the season. By the way, I gotta ask. Some people are probably wondering, what is that cool hat you're wearing there, man? That's a cool cap.
Oh yeah, so this is it's a local sort of old timey baseball team. There used to be a drugstore in Kansas City called Katz's Drugstore, and they had a baseball team at one point in sort of a local league, Midwestern League, and they were called the Kansas City Cats, KATZ, and this was their logo from back in the day. So it's a really cool hat. I mean, I got it from a company called Ebbetsfield Flannels, and they do a bunch of really cool old timey stuff. They got some classic LA stuff out there too. So it's a cool place.
What is it with Kansas City and department stores? The Kansas City
Mm-hmm.
Whiz there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody does it like the Whiz, right?
Yep.
All right, Jimmy. Oh, if anybody wants to know more about Sporting Kansas City or the Wave in general, right? It's the Kansas City Wave, right?
The Current.
The current. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
San Diego
currents,
Wave.
waves. Well, currents, waves. You
Yeah.
don't want to get caught in the current.
San Diego is the Wave, their NWSL team, and we got the Current. So they stole the inspiration from the Current.
Well, yeah, I've seen highlights of the current. My God, they're really good. Fantastic team, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to know more about Sporting Kansas City, about the Current, where can they follow you and Dan, who, man, we missed an opportunity to have him on, but where can they follow you guys?
Yeah, you can check us out on socials. I'm on all social platforms. I'm on Blue Sky a lot more than Twitter these days, but at JCMack03 is where you can find me. You can find Dan at Dan Kuzer, and then you can find our podcast at No Other Pod on basically all platforms. And then, yeah, if you want to check us out, give us a listen, search KCSN Soccer, wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Kansas City Sports Network. We got my little logo right here. Yeah, we also have a video version on YouTube, KCSN Soccer. Check us out. You can see our smiling faces, and yeah, it's a good time.
Well, for anybody watching, they're gonna see your smiling face right here.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to say to other USC fans out here in SoCal?
Yeah,
keep the faith, guys. Anything?
Fight on, always. We fight on. Hey, it's been a rough 15 years or so, but Lincoln, man, he might be cooking and putting together a coaching staff, and suddenly we're putting that fence around SoCal recruiting again, and we're getting some Mater Dei and some Oaks Christian and some Sarah players that are coming back now. That wasn't happening, so we'll see. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but we're getting a little closer. I have a feeling.
Yeah, hopefully, man. I remember those days with Pete Carroll, and it was fun times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again so much, Jimmy. From everybody here at News Across the Galaxy, we appreciate everything you guys do, not just for Sporting Kansas City, but for MLS in general. You help enrich the footballing culture of our country, and it's your everything you do is amazing, and we appreciate it. From everybody here, keep on nagging, and as always, Wu-Tang for life.